Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Dear Vice President Dombrovskis, welcome again to the Parliament. Dear colleagues, government debt is not risk-free and should not be treated as such in our regulations. Not only I believe this, but as you know, also does the IMF, top executives from the Commission, the ECB Supervisory Board, the ESRB. What are your thoughts on this? Do you share this view? And if so, what are the concrete measures you could envisage? Will you make a legislative proposal on that, on government debt as a not risk-free asset? And the second question, on the other hand, there is the problem of concentration of government debt in the hands of a few domestic lenders. In Italy, this phenomenon tripled during the crisis. In Spain, it doubled. In both cases, the result is a great dependence between banking and public sector that creates a big risk in case of crisis. So the question is, the Commission is ready to address the issue by proposing exposure limits to government by domestic lenders? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. So on the first question, indeed, we are reflecting on this in our reflection paper on deepening EMU. But it must be said that our reflection paper is built in two stages. First, more immediate stage where we are more prescriptive, more concrete on what we see as a way forward, and a second stage where we are more open, outlining options and possibilities for member states and other stakeholders' consideration. So on this first question, so in a short term we suggest to build on the work of European Systemic Risk Board by setting up sovereign bond-backed securities. And this does not imply neither mutualization of sovereign debt nor attaching attaching risk weights to the sovereign debt. So proposal does not imply either of those two options. Then on this second stage, which is more reflective, indeed we reflect about European safe assets, which under some options could imply also mutualization, and we reflect on the regulatory treatment of sovereign debt. So this issue is certainly there. So then, as regards sovereign exposures, indeed, this is one of the ways how to deal with those bank sovereign loops, but currently what we are proposing is not exposure limits or caps, but what we are proposing is to advance the very same sovereign bond-backed securities, because that provides for an European security which banks can buy, thus automatically diversifying their holdings and being less exposed to their own sovereigns. So by creating this European product, you actually also create a product for European banks to buy, which allows for this diversification. Thank you.
I have 30 questions. 30 seconds, sorry. No. Thank you for your answers, but could we know your opinion on the question that I raised before? Is government debt a risk-free asset? If we could know your personal opinion on that.
Well, not to create any confusions, because it's because it's a very sensitive issue, I would prefer not to improvise on this. We know the current treatment, and current treatment is attaching zero risk weights. So when discussing non-zero risk weights to sovereign debt, which we outline in our reflection paper, we also need strong safeguards, including addressing potential financial stability implications in some countries which may arise from that kind of decision. So I would say it would be easier if we were all starting from zero, in a sense, to have those sovereign risk weights, but we know that we are not starting from zero, we are starting from current situation, and we need to take into account what financial stability implications it possibly has, and that's exactly what we are putting in our reflection paper.
I'm sure Mr. Tremosa thought that was a one-word answer and therefore within his 5 minutes. So I'm going to go on to the GUI group. Mr.